All right, we're going to get started here. So for you guys that are on Zoom, if you will, in the chat box, throw in your first and last name, and then the office that you're in would be awesome as well. And we're going to get going and talking about the foundation. So we don't really necessarily have a first class for the training program, but if we did, this would be it. So meaning like, it doesn't matter when you drop in. So however, so anyway, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be looking at you the whole time. So.
That's fine.
I have one person live here with me, and then however many we have online, it's like 6 or 7, something like that. So anyway, so what we're going to talk about is the foundation. And here's the idea of the foundation of this is this company came into being in 2009. And what happened was, and when I say this company, meaning Everest, Century 21 obviously has been around since 1972, I think, is when Century 21 started. But Everest began with 5 people sitting around a conference table, and in 2009, which what was going on in the market in 2009 is obviously the world economy was collapsing, and as they were sitting around this conference room table, was George Morris, John Syatt, Rob Oakey, Gretchen Smoot, which most of you guys probably will never meet Gretchen, but and then a 5th person, and I never remember who the 5th one was, but they were sitting around this conference room table, and George said to the rest of them, what do you guys think about just starting our own real estate company? And John Syatt said, if anybody else said that to me, I would tell them they were crazy, but because it's you, I think we should do it. And so that was the birth of this company. Now, within this company, though, they decided what they wanted to do is create a company that was more of a personal development company than it was necessarily about real estate. Meaning, of course, that's what we do, is sell real estate. But their biggest thing they were concerned with is we want to create a company where we're going to help people become their very best. And so that's kind of the idea of what this foundation is. What I'm going to talk to you guys about today is as part of creating and building this company, they decided to study what is it the top producing agents have or top producing agents do. And they came up with 6 things. And so that's the foundation of this company. Now, before we do that though, before we get into the foundation, I first want to talk to you about maybe the footings of the foundation. And that is this. So I didn't do well in art class, but hopefully you can tell that's a 3-legged stool. Not I always think when I draw it, it looks more probably like one of the Star Wars things that I don't even know what they're called, AT-ATs or something like that. Anyway, but this is the 3-legged stool. So think of it as this stool represents your life, and that your life basically has 3 legs to it. Now, the majority of what we talk about in our training programs and things is going to be the business side of things, or we could say it as money. That's one stool, or one leg of the stool, sorry. The other 2 would be our health and relationships. So everything that we talk about is not just going to be about the business or the money side of things, but think of it as, in order for the business part to work, these other 2 pieces have to be in place and working as well. The example that I like to use of that is Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, arguably the best golfer ever, but he got messed up in his relationship. As a result of that, he then started to suffer some health issues, which then led to he didn't golf nearly as well. Now, to some extent, he had brought that back. Then recently, he's now in a car accident and I think broke both of his legs or something. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But just recognize that in order for your life to really work, you need to be working on all 3 of these areas, not just business. So we want to make sure that we are not focused just solely on business. Now, here's why that's important to me. I have spent the last, since 2004, so that's 17 years-ish now, I guess. I have been working with agents and helping them, specifically mostly new agents. And what I have noticed is I have watched a lot of agents come into the business and they put all of their time and effort into this, and they neglect the health and the relationships. and I've watched a lot of them come in through the business and then have issues in these other areas because they're so focused on the business. Now, with that being said, though, it still is going to be one of those things where right off the bat, as far as getting a real estate career up and running, is going to take some time. I like to think of it as using the analogy of flying in an airplane. To get that airplane off the ground, it is full throttle to get it going. Once it's up in the air, they can back it off, slow it down, and keep the plane in the air. Well, the same kind of the thing goes with your real estate career, is getting it up and running in the beginning is going to take a lot of time and effort, and it's going to take a little bit more effort in the beginning to get this piece working, which means it could have a little bit of a detriment on the relationship side of things if you don't manage it, is kind of what I would say. Now, so one of the things that I have asked agents to do as a new agent is saying, okay, go to your significant others and say to them, I'm going to be getting this business up and running, and for the next 3 to 6 months, I'm going to have to put a little bit more effort into this area, which means it might, if we don't manage it, create some issues in this area. Therefore, we need to make a plan of how are we going to do this. And so, for example, I had one agent, this probably was about 5 years ago, that I had an agent that after talking about this, went to he had 3 kids. So went to his wife and 3 kids and said, okay, Dad's going to be working a lot for the next, he said 6 months. He said, but if you guys will support me and help Mom around the house and take care of stuff and not get frustrated that I'm leaving early and maybe coming home late, at the end of 6 months, we're going to take a trip and go to Disneyland. So the kids then bought into it, and instead of being frustrated when he wasn't there, kind of kept that out there of, okay, we're going to go to Disneyland at some point. So anyway, just kind of keep in mind that what we don't want to do, though, is put so much effort into that we neglect relationships or our health. We want to keep working on all of those 3 areas. So think of it as that being the footings to the foundation. So now with that in mind, let's go through these 6 items. So the first one that we have found is, if you look at top producing agents, the top producers all have a purpose, or you might call it a why, or you might say vision, or you might say even dreams. Okay, so one of the first things that we have found with top producing agents is they all understand their why. They have a purpose or a vision. They've got something bigger than themselves that they're working towards. And so part of what I guess I would encourage for each of you, which feels weird to say, like with Amanda here and the rest of you guys online, is what I would encourage for each of you is, which I need to make sure. Perfect. Okay, is that you understand this purpose, why, or vision. Now, when you listen to the daily messages that come out, and when you listen to George speak at a Morning Ascent or at Summit, what you will notice is most of the time, everything he talks about fits into this category. Now, occasionally he'll get into some of the other pieces that we'll talk about here, but the majority of the time when he's talking, if you listen, he's really talking about knowing where you're going. Do you know where you're going? Do you know where you're headed? Do you understand your why? What is it that you are trying to accomplish beyond real estate is where he will focus on it. And the reason for that is because top producing agents typically will have this figured out and they know what they're trying to accomplish with it. Now, our top agent within our company is an agent out of California in terms of income. So you'll hear me refer to top agents, and I'll refer to the one in Utah typically as our top in terms of transactions, but the one in California is the top in terms of income. Well, John and George went and bought this company in California that was called Troop Real Estate that became then Century 21 Everest. And when they bought it, their top agent down there was doing just under $1 million a year. And what George immediately started to work with her on was this: the purpose, the why, the vision, the dreams. And with her. In fact, she almost left the company. And he said to her, just give me 90 days to work with you. And what he wanted to focus on was the purpose, is helping her to get dialed in on what her purpose or her vision was. And as a result of that, over the last, which has been 5 years now, over the last 5 years, her income went from basically 900,000 to over 3 million last year in income. And she would tell you it is because George got her focused on this. Now, our job in terms of real estate, logically, if you stopped and look at it and said, okay, your expectation, what is expected of you is you go out and talk to strangers. You're going to go out and talk to people about real estate and ask them if they want to buy or sell. Well, logically, we don't want to go do that. So as a result of that, you've got to have something bigger that you're working towards that is bigger than just the money. Now, so number two, which I'm going to give number two, but I'm not done with number one yet. So number two is goals, plan, schedule. Now, so here's the thing. Here's what's interesting to me that I've noticed. In the years that I've been training agents, what I've noticed is agents will come into the business and they will set a goal. And I'm talking about, I have only been with Everest for 6 years. But yet, like I said, I've been training for basically 17 years. So prior to that, the 11 years prior to that, and me coming in and really understanding this purpose, the vision, the why, is I would have always started every training with, okay, we got to set a goal. Well, the problem with just setting a goal, the way most agents set a goal. Now, we're not going to do, we're going to do business plan and stuff on Thursday this week. So I'm not going to say a whole lot about this today, other than I want to make this point is if just setting a goal caused you to be successful, we would all be successful because we all set goals. But what I've noticed is that usually the number one or most common goal that people set in real estate is that they want to make $100,000 a year. Now that's starting to change to where people are thinking more like 200 or 250. But back to me, when I got my license, 1996, my goal was I wanted to make $100,000 a year from real estate. Well, just having the goal to do that is not going to get you there. There has to be something bigger, which is the point of this purpose, why, and vision, which is why George spends so much time talking about it, is because so many people don't really know what it is for them. What is your purpose? Now, I'm going to give you some ideas of how to figure that out if you don't know. But just recognize that setting the goal without having the purpose behind it, you're less likely to achieve the goal. As long as we have this purpose, we understand what we're going to do with it. So how do we figure it out? So if you're not sure, which I have found, what I've found is most of the time in training, most people don't know this. They don't know like what is really going to drive me to do what I'm going to do. Now, I'll share with you how I figured it out. For me, is what I did is I got a piece of paper and I wrote at the top of it, what is my purpose? And then what you want to do is once you have done that, so you get a piece of paper and set aside at least an hour where you just are going to write at the top of the piece of paper, what is my purpose? And then what you want to do is start to just write every single thing that comes to your mind. So ask yourself the question, what is my purpose? Then whatever pops into your head, you write it down. Now, some of the stuff that's going to pop into your head is going to be, I don't know. And you're going to write, I don't know. And then you're going to say, okay, well, what's my purpose? And then it's going to, something's going to pop in your head that says, why am I doing this? So you write down, why am I doing this? If you have the thought come into your head, this is stupid, write down, this is stupid. If you have the thought come into your head that says, I hate Russ because he told me to do this, you write down, you write every single thing that comes into your head. If you'll do that, if you'll just write down what's my purpose and then just keep writing everything that comes into your head. If you start to think I want to eat a peanut butter sandwich, write down I want to eat a peanut butter sandwich. I'd rather be at the beach. You write down like anything that comes into your head, you're going to write it down underneath what is my purpose. Now, what should happen, and for me, let me tell you, I had set aside an hour and I went through and I just wrote, and I wrote every single thing that came into my head. In fact, I ought to go get that and look through it again to see some of the stuff, or at least how many items I had written down during that hour. But I had just written it down. And after an hour, I felt like I don't have anything. Because what should happen is, as you write it down, somewhere along the way, you should have something that you would emotionally attach to, that when you write it down, you're going to feel like that's it. After an hour, that I hadn't, like, I was like, I still don't think I got it. So what I did is, this was on a Saturday. I just had decided, okay, the next Saturday, I'm going to take another hour and do it again. So the next Saturday, I set aside an hour. I wrote at the top of the piece of paper, what is my purpose? And then I just started writing and writing and writing. And after almost an hour, I was like, I still have not emotionally, anything I've written down hasn't just been like, oh, that's it. So what I did is I then had this idea of, okay, I need to go back and read everything. So I got the paper from the week before and the one from this week, and I just started to read through everything that I'd written down. Well, what I noticed is that there started to be a common theme. So I wasn't writing and saying specifically, I guess, what it was, but as I read through it, I started to notice these common themes coming up over and over and over again. And that's when then all of a sudden I emotionally attached to, like, that's it. That's what it is. That's what I keep coming back to. So here's what I would say for you. If you'll do that and write it down, you'll figure out along the way. Well, for me, here's what I figured out is part of what my purpose is to help other people to succeed, which is why I realized why I have enjoyed doing what I do, because I made more money selling real estate than I do standing here and training. But recognizing that part of what just makes me feel like I'm accomplishing what I was sent here to do is me helping other people. And that's what I will tell you that I have learned as well, is when you go through this purpose, sometimes people will say, well, my purpose or my vision is I want to go on all these exotic vacations. And I'll tell you, if that's what it is, that might drive you to do the goals. But in the long term, it's not going to drive you to have the satisfaction. Here's what I found. Typically, the thing that's going to get you there is going to be tied to other people. So as you write down this purpose, the vision, the why, what should happen is you're probably going to notice that it actually is typically going to be something outside of yourself. It's something you feel like you want to do that is about helping other people, probably not just about you going on vacations and stuff, although that could be a good benefit. All right. So that's what the idea of this. And so again, just reminding you, top producing agents all understand that. They understand something that what they want to have these goals of what they want to do, but it's to do something that is bigger than themselves is what's driving them to do it. Because when it comes time to get on the phone and call a for sale by owner, an expired listing, or just even a random phone call, like our emotions kick in and go like, don't do this. But if you have something bigger that you're working towards that you're like, no, I need to accomplish this, it's going to get you to get past that fear of making those phone calls. All right. Any questions or comments? For you guys online, you unmute, say something. Abby, why are you not here in person? I just saw. This is where I'm testing you to see if you're really listening. I think you told me you were going to be gone, Abby, if I remember, but she's not responding, so she's not really there. All right.
I am really here.
Oh, okay, good. Why are you not here?
My dog was sick, and so I wanted to make sure I was taking care of him, and so I'm just watching on Zoom.
Oh, all right, you're fine. I'm just giving you a hard time. I usually can count on you being here.
I know. I'm sorry. I wanted to be there too, but I wanted to make sure he didn't throw up everywhere.
I can understand that too. So, all right, cool. All right, so next, number 2 then. So the second thing in terms of this foundation, the company foundation, is goals, plan, and schedule. Now, we're going to, on Thursday, we're going to go through and talk about I'm going to show you how you should set the goal. And so for today, I mean, we're going to spend basically, over an hour and a half on this on Thursday. So I'm not going to do a ton on it right now, other than to say this. The way that we typically set an income goal is the reason we don't actually achieve the goal. And so what I'm going to show you on Thursday is how to set that goal so that you're more likely to achieve it. And so we'll spend a lot of time on Thursday going through that piece of it. We're going to go through and talk about the business plan, and then I'll also go through and give you what the ideal schedule would be. So for today, we're not going to do that. I'm going to skip over that today, but just know that on Thursday, that's what we're going to talk about. And again, that's the second piece the top producing agents have, is they all set goals, they have a plan to get there, and then they have a schedule that they're going to follow. If you'll do those things, it will work. So, and we'll go through that more on Thursday. All right, next. The next one is, and number 3 and 4, for whatever reason, every time probably I teach it, anytime you hear George or John talk about it, we kind of bounce them back and forth. So there's not necessarily a set order on this, although I've tried to create one. And so here's what I usually do it as, is mindset. Okay. So the next thing that he found is the top producing agents all have a strong mindset. So how do we do that? How do we keep that strong and in place? Well, part of that is for you to understand, you get a text message every day from the company with a daily message. The idea behind that is driven behind this whole idea of mindset, is what we want to do is having the day starting out with getting you into a right mindset. And so that's why we do that. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about a guy by the name of Adolf Merkel. My guess is that you guys don't know who he is, haven't ever heard of him, but I'm going to tell you about Adolf Merkel. And now here's the point though of why, is your mindset is so crucial, and it is a skill set, but what you should not do, Adolf Merkel had his self-worth was tied to his net worth. So his mindset was not in the right spot. But so now let me tell you the story about Adolf Merkel. Adolf Merkel lived in Germany. He owned a pharmaceutical sales company. And it was actually started by his grandpa, who then his dad ran it, and then he ran it. Well, in 2008, his net worth, and don't hold me to this exact, but it's pretty close, is his net worth was 13 point something billion dollars. He was within the top 100 richest people in the world at 13 point something billion dollars, his net worth. Well, in 2008, as we already talked about what happened to the world economy, his business took a hit. Well, the other thing that he did as part of that was that he had decided that he wanted to make an investment against Volkswagen. So he was seeing that what was happening with the world economy, he assumed Volkswagen stock was going to tank. So what he did is he went and did a short play on Volkswagen. Now, do you know what that means? Okay, and I'm going to assume that some of you guys on Zoom probably don't either. Basically what it means, if you're investing in the stock market, typically you go buy shares of stock, hoping that the value will go up. Well, if you think the value of a stock is going to go down, you can actually short the stock. And what that means is that basically what you do is, think of it this way. Let's say that I owned stock in Volkswagen, but you think the value is going to go down. You essentially could come to me and say, Russ, could I borrow your shares of stock? And I would say, yeah, sure, you could do that. And you borrow it, but then you actually go sell it. So maybe instead of even using stock, let's use like a hammer. You know, you say, can I borrow your hammer? And you take, and I say, yeah, you can borrow my hammer. You take my hammer and you go and sell it to somebody else, that hammer. And the thinking being that your assumption is the price of hammers is going to go down. So you sell that hammer to just some other neighbor for $100. But you assume that what's going to happen is the price of hammers is going to go down to 50. Therefore, you're going to wait for the price of hammers to go to 50. Then you'll go buy it and come give it back to me. So, hey, here's a brand new hammer. I mean, and that's not exactly how it works, but that's probably the best way to explain it. So if you're going to short stock, you're going to sell it first, and then you buy it. You're hoping to buy it back at a cheaper cost. Well, that's what he did. And I don't know the amount of money that he invested in this, but he shorted Volkswagen stock, assuming the price would drop. he could then go buy the stock back at a cheaper price. Therefore, he would make the difference between what he sold it and what he bought it for. What he didn't know was that Porsche was going to step in and help Volkswagen. Yep, you're good. So now I'm going to only talk to Zoom for a bit here. No, you're good, man. Don't worry about it. Okay, so what he didn't know is Porsche was going to step in and help out Volkswagen, which immediately turned the price of their stock around so that the price of the stock actually went up. Well, so now let's go back to my example. If I had borrowed a hammer, sold it to my friend for $100, thinking the price of hammers was going to go to $50, but now all of a sudden they're $150, and let's say that the person I borrowed it from was now saying, hey, I want my hammer back. Well, I have to now go buy a hammer at whatever the current price is. And let's say it was $150. So now I had to go spend $150 when I had already sold it for $100. I'm now out $50 for that hammer. Well, that's what happened to this guy, Adolf Merkel, is the price of the shares of stock for Volkswagen shot up. Well, now he had to go cover that short. So when you hear people talking about covering a short play or something, covering their shorts, that's where that comes from, is you have to go cover that short, which means he had to go buy the stock back, but at a much higher price than what he had sold the stock for. Well, at the end of 2008, so that was at the start of 2008, his net worth is 13.8 something billion dollars. At the end, he had to go do that short, he had to cover that short, which lost him a bunch of money. Also, his business, his pharmaceutical company, was not doing as well. At the end of 2008, his net worth had dropped from 13 point something billion, we'll just say 13.8 to keep the math easy, down to 9.8 billion. No, I'm sorry, I told you that. It was 12.8 billion down to 9.8 billion. So he lost $3 billion in 2008. Now, question for you guys, and since there's nobody in the room with me, you guys on Zoom have to answer. Could you still survive off of $9.8 billion? Do you think you could have a pretty good lifestyle?
It'd be
Absolutely.
hard, but I think I'd make it.
Yeah, you might have to cut back a little, right?
Just a little.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Because this guy's mindset was that his self-worth was tied to his net worth, in January of 2009, he went and stepped in front of a train. He committed suicide by stepping in front of a train, took his life because he felt like he was a failure. See, that's what we don't want you to do, is become successful and tie your mindset to your self-worth to your net worth. Because if that's the case, see, here's the thing. Probably let me say it another way to you. Here's how I want you to think about it. I have an uncle, and I don't know how much money he has, but the numbers that I've heard thrown around, and in fact, I asked my cousin, who was his son, one time this question, and he said he didn't know the answer. But my one uncle is very, very well off, and I had heard, the number I had heard was that he had $30 million was his net worth. Well, I was talking to him one day because I was thinking about this whole mindset stuff and just how it works. And so I went to this uncle one day, we were at a family party, and I went up to him and I said, all right, I have a question for you, because he is probably, how much older than me is he? Probably 35, 40 years older than what I am. And so I went to him one day and I said, here's what I've noticed about, his name's Tom. I said, okay, Tom, here's what I've noticed about you, is that the whole life growing up, I have watched you own 3 businesses. All 3 businesses, you have grown them basically from nothing to being successful, and then selling the business, and then you stepped over and did another business, grew it to successful, sold it, stepped over to another business, grew it to success, and then at that point he still owned it, but my cousin was now the one running it. So my uncle still has ownership in it, but my cousin's the one who now runs that business. And I went to my uncle and I said, now, and the last business was, he was a home builder, okay? And they still are around today, the company. But I went to him and I said, okay, Tom, let's assume that tomorrow morning you lost all of your money, was all gone, every bit of it. I said, my assumption is that just based on who you are, which really what I was talking to him about was his mindset, is I said, I just have this feeling that if you lost everything that you had, every bit of money that you had, within a short period of time, you would get it all back. And I said, so here I am, this young whippersnapper that wants to learn from you, who is, you know, a mentor of mine, whatever. This is my mom's brother. And I said, what would you do if that happened? If you lost everything? Now, here's the interesting thing on this to me. So there's two things that I learned from this. The first one was just the look on his face when I said that to him. When I said, imagine that you lost everything. Like the look he gave me was like almost one of shock or fear, or like he had never even fathomed that ever happening, which I thought that was curious for one thing. But the second thing that he said to me is, I'm not sure what I would do, what I would do to earn it back, but it would have something to do with real estate, which made me feel good because I was already a realtor at that time. And he is the uncle that when you've heard me talk about, or you will hear me talk about in the lead generation class, he's the one that kind of inspired me to come into real estate and become a realtor. But I thought it was interesting that his first thought of how he would earn the money back is he would go do something that was real estate related. All right, so now here's the next piece of this. So in terms of mindset, there are a few areas that I want you guys to think about. And as I share these with you, I want you to evaluate basically where you're at in terms of these different areas of how they're progressing for you. And that is this: in terms of our mindset, we want to be thinking about what is it that you are reading now. So that would be the first one. Maybe let me grab a pen here and I'll even just write these down. I don't know how well you guys can see online, but I'll tell you what I'm writing. So the first thing I'm writing down is reading. Okay, so what are you reading? Now, I don't expect you to answer that for me right now, but I want you to answer it to yourself. Are you consistently reading something? Do you have books that you are consistently reading? One of the things that I will mention to you throughout all these classes as we go through them, it will be a number of books that I would recommend that you read. Now, most people, once they graduate from high school, will never read again. In fact, I have family members, I'll say it that way. I have family members who basically have told me, I hate reading and I will never read anything ever again. Well, that's a good way to not have a good mindset, is what I would tell you, is not if you're not reading. So you should be reading. Meaning, if somebody took the time to figure out how to make things work in life and they write a book about it, it would probably be a good thing for us to go and read to shorten that learning curve so we don't have to go through that same learning curve that they did. So what are you reading? And are you reading consistently things that are going to improve and strengthen your mindset? All right, next. In terms of mindset, the next one is watching. What things are you watching that will improve you? Meaning, it's interesting to me. So I have three boys. My oldest is, how old is he? 26-ish or coming up on 26. And then my youngest is 13, just turned 13. Well, it's been interesting to see the difference. Raising my oldest versus raising my youngest is two different worlds. Meaning, with my oldest, we would plop him down in front of Barney or some of those type of shows. With my youngest, with him, it was an iPad and he was on watching YouTube videos, and even still watches a lot of YouTube videos. The other day I went downstairs and he was watching a YouTube video about Minecraft because he's trying to build something and somebody did a YouTube video. It's just interesting of the other one too, I'll tell you. I spent, not last week, but the week before, I spent down in Moab with 17 boys that were between the age of, the youngest was 12, the oldest was 18. but with 17 of them, and it was interesting of how what they do on their phones is they will just pull up TikTok and watch video after video after video. Well, that's kind of the thing I would ask of you is like, are you watching things that are going to give you a stronger mindset, or are you just mindlessly watching things? So take a look at that and think about it for a minute. Is what kinds of things are you watching, and is it strengthening your mindset, or is it making it worse and mindless? Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. Next is listening to. What things are you listening to? So the same kind of a thing. Zig Ziglar made the comment that your car should be a mini university. That if we do it right, rather than getting in the car and listening to talk radio or to just music, which there are times that we're going to do that, and I do as well. There are some days that I'm just like, I got to listen to some music. I don't want to have to try to think right now. But most of the time when I get in the car, I continue listening to some audio program that currently right now, there is an audio out there that you can get that is Napoleon Hill, that is a seminar that he did. And I don't know what year this was done in, but it was a long time ago. And I've been listening to that. So when I plug that in the car, I'm listening to him talking about what he learned by going out and interviewing all of these people that he did in order to write the book, Think and Grow Rich. Well, he's now talking about all of those different things. Well, so that's what I've been listening to. Same thing when I go running. When I go running, I typically don't just throw on music. And I know some people don't dig this, meaning like they think, well, when I'm working out, I got to have music to keep me pumped up and going. I have just found for me, if I'm listening to something like that, it takes my mind off of the exercise and can focus on that. All right. Next for mindset is going to be associate. So the next one is associate. Who are you associating with? Now, I've heard this said by a number of people, but the most recent one that I heard say it was Darren Hardy. Darren Hardy was the editor of Success Magazine, and he's no longer that. He's now does his own speaking and things. But he was talking, and I heard him say, and I've heard others say this as well, but your income is the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. So if you stopped and looked at the 5 people that you hang around with the most, your income probably is the average of those 5 people, which basically what that means is this: your mindset is going to be the average of those same 5 people that you hang out with as well. And I have just noticed that if I'm hanging out with people who are negative and talking negative, I start to fall into that same trap. So be careful of who you're associating with. The other thing that Darren Hardy said about this, which is why I bring him up on it, is here's what he said. You should basically put people, every person that you know should be in one of 3 categories. And think of it this way. Basically what you want to do is say, okay, of the people that I associate with, there are some that you should actually probably spend more time with. And I know for me, as I stop and think about this, if I want to increase my income, I know some of the people that I should be hanging out with that I'm not, that I need to start to associate with a little more than I currently do if I want the income to go up. So you should have a group that you, when you look at people, you want to say, is this someone that I should be associating more with? Or number 2 to that is this person that I'm associating with them, I'm investing the right amount of time with that person, in which case you don't need to change anything. Or number 3 is, should you spend less time with these people? Meaning you may have family members that you need to spend some time with. Therefore, you can't just say, well, I'm just never going to go see these people and I'm never going to spend time with them, because it's your family and you need to go see them, from time to time. But you may say, I'm going to limit the amount of time that I'm spending with those people or friends, whoever it is. But think of it as every person you should be evaluating. Should I spend less time with this person? Am I spending the right amount of time, or should I spend more time with them? Because it is so crucial to how you're going to think is how you respond to these people. Another way that I will tell you that I had heard from somebody of how they figured out they needed to quit hanging out with somebody, was writing in their journal. They started to notice that in every Wednesday when they would write in their journal, that they were writing negative things. Well, what they did is they stopped and thought about it for a minute and said, what is it that's happening on Wednesdays that is causing me to write so negatively in my journal? And what they realized is every Wednesday they went to lunch with a certain group of people. Well, they immediately said, okay, if I want to get rid of that negativity, I got to quit going and hanging out with those people. So they did. And then all of a sudden, what they were writing in their journal changed. All right. So that's the next one on mindset is who are you associating with? And should you spend more time with them? Are you spending the right amount of time or should you spend less time with them? And then finally on mindset is, participate. Participate. Here's what I would say. Here's what I have observed is in the 6 years I have been with Everest, every single morning we send out a message, daily message. And every morning we do a morning ascent, whether it's you're watching on Zoom or coming and being here live in person. But every single day we do those things. And it is all designed around helping with mindset. Well, here's what I've noticed and what's interesting to me is I will watch people come and they will participate in the daily message and they will come and participate in morning ascents. Then all of a sudden they slowly stop doing that, participating in it. Then what happens is their business tends to slow down a little. They start to get frustrated because they're not doing the income that they thought they should be doing. And they end up then leaving the company. And generally, the people who end up leaving frustrated because their income's not where it is also have quit participating. And so here's what I would say to you is sometimes what people will say, and I've been guilty of this myself, I'll tell you, is that we sometimes feel like, oh yeah, but I've heard George say that and he tells that same story and I've heard that story. I don't, this is what I hear from people. I don't come to Summit anymore because it's just George telling the same stories I've already heard. Well, I've already heard the story, so I already know. Well, my question for you is, do you understand it and have you applied the principle of the story that he's telling? Because more than likely, if you're struggling, you haven't. And so I would invite you to stop and look at it and say, okay, I'm going to participate. So make some decisions of what that looks like. And I'm not saying you have to listen to every daily message every day. I'm not saying you have to come to morning ascent every single day, but I would say get a schedule set in place for you that says, I'll listen to the messages on Tuesday and Thursday, and I'm going to attend morning ascent on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I mean, something, whatever it is. But I would say at least 2 to 3 times a week, you should be participating in morning ascent. So 2 to 3 days a week that you're just say at minimum. Now, if you're newer and trying to get going, I would say be there every single day participating. Same thing with role play. Rick and Ruby do a role play that's on Zoom, so there's no excuse not to be on and participating in it. But get involved. If you'll participate, what you will find is the mindset becomes bigger and stronger and you will do better. All right. Any questions, comments on that? Let me see if there's anything in the chat box. Nope.
Nope, it all sounds great, Russ.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, next, number 4 then. The 4th thing is what we're going to put down here as discipline / accountability. So discipline or accountability. Now, let me ask you guys on Zoom, since there's nobody else in the room with me. I feel really bad. Not really, but what is the difference between discipline and accountability? What would you say is the difference?
Accountability, you're taking accountability for your actions, and discipline is when you don't take accountability for your actions.
Okay, good. Any other thoughts?
This is Lisa. I would say maybe almost even the opposite. A discipline is having that structure and that intrinsic motivation that you have to do what you need to do. And the accountability is accepting when you don't.
Okay, good, like it. Anyone else?
Hey, Russ, it's Mark. I think also accountability is measurable. So you can have the discipline, but if you don't, if you just have the discipline and yet it's not working, you've got to figure out why and measurable and try to figure out, how to make it work better. So I think it's more of a measurable type.
Good. Love it. Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, so here's how I think about it, is I think about it as the discipline is internal. Accountability is typically going to come to you externally. So discipline is internal, accountability is external. And here, so again, let me remind you why we're even talking about this. Part of what we have learned is top producing agents have these 6 pieces in place. And here's what we have found. Top producing agents are either very highly disciplined, meaning that if they say they're going to do something, you can count on them to do it, that they will just automatically do it just because of they said they would. Accountability, or if they can't get them to themselves to do it just based on self-discipline, then they get someone to hold them accountable. So let me tell you how this worked for me. Typically what I have found is that a lot of times for people, they have to start with the accountability, meaning finding someone to hold them accountable until they get to a certain point, and then they can become self-disciplined. So for me, exercise. Growing up, like I did a ton of exercise just because as a kid, I was just out playing and having fun. I loved riding bikes. And so I had a BMX bike that I loved doing tricks and jumps and all that kind of stuff. So as a kid, exercise was easy because it just was fun and I would go do it. As an adult, when I realized I got to start exercising, I didn't really want to. And so what I did is I found somebody that I said, let's meet at the gym every single day at this particular time. And for me, I knew if I had to meet them there, I was accountable to them, that if I didn't show up, they were going to be mad. Or for me, I knew if I got up and was there and they didn't show up, I was upset because I was like, hey, I got up and here, why aren't you? Yet today, I don't work out with anyone. I do it on my own now because I have the discipline to do it now. I've done it enough to where now I just, in the morning, I get up, I have my routine that I go through and I just follow my routine. And I don't need anybody to hold me accountable. So that's what I would say. Now, let me bring that in terms of real estate. I will tell the story in the lead generation class again. I'll talk about this more. But I had a lady at the office. Her name was Shirley. She and I started at the same time. And here's what I will tell you for you guys that are newer agents. More than likely, well, the reason I see agents fail is they don't get started on prospecting. They won't go and prospect. So if you're in that boat, what I would recommend is find somebody to be an accountability partner about it with. So what I did is, for me, I was struggling in getting myself to do it, to have the discipline just to do it. So I found a lady that started about the same time as me. Her name was Shirley. Shirley and I just got together and just said, hey, let's go door knocking. Now, for me, part of where that came from was I knew if I wanted to work out, I needed an accountability partner at that time to say, let's meet at the gym. So I did the same thing with prospecting. Is I got with Shirley and said, okay, let's help each other get prospecting. And so Shirley and I would meet up at the office. We would do a little role play for 20 minutes or so. We would jump in a car and we would go out door knocking. She would take one side of the road. I would take the other side of the road. But every day, if ever there was a day I felt like I don't want to go do it, Shirley was there to say, nope, come on, you're going to need the money. You need to go do it. Or I would do the same thing with Shirley. We would hold each other accountable. And especially because when a deal starts to go south, the last thing you want to do is prospect. And I remember I would get to the office and tell Shirley, oh, I can't go today because I got this deal and it's going to fall apart and I got to really work on it. And gratefully, Shirley would say to me, nope, you're going to go door knocking still with me today, because if that deal falls apart, you're going to go find another one today that would replace it. And she would drag me a lot of times kicking and screaming maybe not that bad, but she would drag me out to go door knocking. And I was always so grateful afterwards. Well, eventually though, I got to the point where I realized that I just needed to set an appointment every day. And once that happened, I then didn't need Shirley anymore to hold me accountable. I now had the discipline to do it. So I would say for you guys, here's what I would tell you. If you have had your license for more than a few weeks and you are not prospecting on a consistent basis, you need to find somebody to be an accountability partner. Find someone that you can partner up with, that you can say, let's meet at the office and go knock on doors, or let's meet at the office and get on the phone, or let's jump on Zoom together and sit and make phone calls with each other while we're on Zoom so that we can hold each other accountable to do it. Because it's too easy to start making phone calls and then all of a sudden kind of go, well, I need to probably go do this, or I should go do that. Get somebody to be an accountability partner with you for that. Unless if you've got the discipline to go do it on your own, great, good for you. But I've found most agents don't do it. In fact, let me make sure that he's not on here. Even if he is, he's not on, but even if he was, I'll still say it anyway. I have a neighbor that just got his real estate license, joined our company not too long ago, should be in this class right now, is not. And I'm hearing from his dad. So this is a neighbor kid that I've known him since he was born, basically. And his dad will call me and go, oh, can you help him? And I keep telling his dad, he's got to show up. I can't help him if he doesn't show up. Well, he's not on here. The other thing I told him is find somebody that you can prospect with. Get somebody that you can say, let's do this together. I'm struggling with doing it. That's what you got to do. If you're not prospecting, if you don't have the discipline to say, I'm going to prospect X number of hours and this is my schedule and when I'm going to do it, then get somebody to do it with that will hold you accountable to saying, why didn't you show up? Why aren't you here? I promise you, for me, if I would not have done that with Shirley, I would not be standing here teaching you guys today. I don't know where I'd be. I don't know what I would be doing, but it is because of Shirley forcing me. And sometimes it was forcing me to say, nope, we're going door knocking. Come on, let's go. Get your stuff ready. I'll meet you in the car in 5 minutes. And then she would sit in the car and I would feel guilty and go with her. That's what you got to do. And thankfully she did that for me. So that's what we have found is top producers either are highly disciplined and they can do it on their own, or they get accountability partners. Now, last thing on this that I will say, the other thing that you can do is we have within the script books. So you should have in your script book. And if you don't have one, get one. Just talk to the front desk and they'll get you one. A script book. Inside the script book are accountability contracts where you can get with a manager or a friend or somebody, anybody, I don't care, have an accountability partner that you can get with and say, this is what I will do. I will call 3 people from my SOI every day. And if I don't, then I'll pay you $5,000 or, whatever it is. But it's got to be high enough. The accountability has got to be high enough to where you're like, no, I'm not giving that person $5,000. I will go and make the calls or whatever. But put together accountability contracts that you will help each other out that way to ensure that you go and do what you need to do in order to be successful. All right. Any questions on that? Discipline or accountability? All right. We'll go to number 5 then. Now, for number 5, I'm going to need, in fact, actually, I'm going to move over to this other side of the board here. So hang on. Let me erase this. All right. Number 5. Number 5 is skill sets. Okay. Number 5 is skill sets. Now, there are 12 skills that you should be working on getting better at. So I'm going to list those 12 skills for you. We're not going to go through them in great detail because a lot of what these skills are going to be other classes that I will teach you in and help you with. But just know that there are 12 skills that you need to be working on. And so what I want you to do today is, as I list these skills up here, I want you to evaluate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. So 10 being that you're perfect at it, 1 being you're horrible at it. Okay. And then the idea of this is, at the end of this, I want you to be able to know, okay, here's the skills that I need to work on and get better at. Okay. So the first one. So number 1 is going to be setting appointments. Okay. So number 1 skill, the first one is you got to be good at setting appointments. Now, we're going to do 2 days worth of class on that, which I don't remember the days, probably next week would be my guess. But we're going to spend 2 days in class, essentially an hour and a half to 2 hours each day, talking about and working on helping you learn how to set appointments. Because most of the time, the way that you are trained to communicate actually stops you from setting appointments rather than helps you with it. So rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you at in terms of that on setting appointments? All right, number 2. The second one is lead follow-up. Okay, how good are you at lead follow-up? Here's what I'll tell you. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 75, maybe even 80% of the business that you're going to do will come as a result of lead follow-up. Now, in fact, I would be curious for you guys that are on Zoom here. So I'm going to come over to where I can see the chat box. How many of you either put in the chat box Lindsay or Kenzie of who it was that recruited you? And really, any of you guys could put anybody in there, but is it Lindsay that recruited you, or was it Kenzie? Or if it was somebody else, you could put them in there too. But the reason I'm going to talk about Lindsay and Kenzie real quick. So I'm seeing 2 that say Kenzie so far, and then Abby's got Lindsay. Okay, so here's the question then. Now, here's what I also want to know from you guys. How many times did they follow up with you before you decided to join the company? And if you don't remember, then just ballpark guess it. Well, Lisa, only once. You were an easy sale. Super easy. All right. Okay, Jacob said 2 to 3 times. Yeah, Kenzie, she is that good. I would agree, Lisa. 2. Interesting. Okay, usually when I ask that, there'll be somebody that will say, she followed up with me for over a year or whatever. So that's interesting. Okay, good to know. But so here's what I will tell you from my own experience as well. And I'll tell you why in one of the other classes this works. But getting good at lead follow-up and following up with people is going to be one of the most important skills you can have. Is you need to be good at doing lead follow-up. Most agents are not good at lead follow-up. Most agents, what they will do is they will get a lead. They may try them one time and then they never follow up again with them. I'm guilty of this. In fact, not too long ago, actually, well, it's probably been over a year, maybe even a year and a half, maybe 2 even, I don't know. It's been a while. I was getting my hair cut. And while I was getting my hair cut, I had mentioned something about doing real estate. Well, the lady, the hairdresser that was not cutting my hair, but right next to where we were at, heard me talking about it. And she goes, hey, I'm wanting to find a duplex. If you could find me a duplex, I would buy it. And so I asked her a couple of questions. She gave me all the information. When I got done, I said, hey, well, let me get your phone number because I know an agent who does a ton of duplexes, and that he a lot of times will come across them before they even hit the market. So give me your information. I'll follow up with him and see if I can find you a duplex before it hits the market. And so she gave me her information. I wrote it down on a piece of paper, came to the office. I went and found that agent. I said to that agent, hey, I got somebody who's looking for a duplex. You know anything coming up? Do you know anybody that wants to sell in this price range? And he said, let me see what I can find out. Now, the challenge with doing that is someone who specializes in that area, like this guy does, where he does a lot of, duplex, triplex, fourplex stuff. The challenge with that is he has got built such a good network of people that when he does find out about one, he usually already has somebody else that wants to do it. So of course, he's not going to bring it to me and say, hey, here's one for you, because he usually already has somebody and he can double end it. Well, as a result of that, I said, hey, let me know. He said, okay. I let her name and phone number sit there for a long, long time. And I'd look at it and go, oh, I should call her. And then I wouldn't. Oh, I should call her. And then I wouldn't. See, that's what I'm talking about, is if that's what you're doing, then come back to number 4 here of discipline and accountability. If you don't have the discipline to do lead follow-up, get an accountability contract put in place that will help you to do a better job with it. But how good are you at lead follow-up? Scale of 1 to 10. All right, we'll work on that more later. Number 3, next one. And now these are not in necessarily any order. There's just I'm somewhat going to try to keep them in an order of, you first try to set an appointment, but if you can't, then you do lead follow-up. Once you set the appointment, then the next skill would be, well, let's do it as, I'm going to say pricing here. So the next one is pricing. How good are you at pricing property? So assuming we're getting a listing appointment, you got to be good at pricing property. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at it? Well, here's what I will tell you you should do if you're not. If you don't feel like you're good at pricing property and you want to get better, what you need to do is once a week, at least once a week, run a CMA on a property. Just find one on the MLS, go run a CMA on it, or choose one of your neighbor's houses, run a CMA on it, and see kind of what you think the price is. What I usually like to recommend doing is find a property that's just hit the market, like came on today. Go run a CMA on it, and then watch that property and check a month later, did it sell for the price you thought it would sell for? That's how I would say you're going to get good at pricing property. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at it? And if you're not good, I just told you what you need to do to work on it to get better. All right, number 4. Then once we have now set the appointments, we've priced the property, the next skill is presenting. How good are you at presenting? 1 to 10. If you had an opportunity to go on a listing presentation or you got a buyer sitting down with you, how good are you going to be at presenting to them? Now, like I said, we're going to work on this. Again, I've got 2 whole days worth of classes, 2 2-hour classes that we're going to work on, where I'm going to help you on both. Actually, we got 3 days worth of classes. That 2 days of it is on the buyer, 1 day on the listing side of things that we're going to work on. Now, so how good are you at presenting? All right, next, number 5. The 5th one then here, let's say handling objections. Okay, because not everybody, now the natural ending to a good presentation is that they just sign the contract. But not always is that going to happen. You're going to occasionally have somebody that gives you some objections. So how good are you at being able to handle those objections? Do you know what you need to say and how to say it in order for you to handle their objections? Now, here's the good news. There's only a handful of objections and they don't change. That's the best news. In my 25 plus years of doing this, the objections haven't changed. They still are the same objections that they were back then. Now, the way they show up might be a little different, meaning we didn't have the internet when I first started. Properties weren't on there, and somebody couldn't say, well, I'll just throw my property on the Zillow and it'll sell. But there were people would put it in the newspaper, they'd put it in a magazine, whatever. Like, so the source of how the objection comes has changed, but it hasn't changed. You still got people that, I want to do it for sale by owner. That hasn't changed. I want you to do it for less commission. Hasn't changed. I have a friend that's a real estate agent. Hasn't changed. None of those things have changed. So how good are you at handling? I just realized I wrote handling objects instead of objections. I forgot the last part of the word there. Objections. Okay. How good are you at handling objections? All right. Number 6. which I just realized number 6 probably should have been up here, but that's okay. And that is pre-qualifying. Pre-qualifying. How good are you at pre-qualifying? Now, here's the idea of pre-qualifying. Sometimes people look at pre-qualifying as disqualifying. We're not trying to disqualify people. We don't want to disqualify people from selling or buying, but we want to pre-qualify. So let me ask you guys, what would be the purpose of us asking pre-qualifying questions of people? What would be the purpose of pre-qualifying?
To know what they want, to know what cheese we got to help them find.
Okay, good. I like it. Any other thoughts?
Their seriousness.
Good, that's exactly right. So what we're wanting to find out is motivation. So seriousness, I would just say it is motivation. We want to find out how motivated they are. And then within that motivation, we want to find out, can they qualify? Is what they're looking for real? Does it exist? Those type of things. All right, number 7. The next one is closing. How good are you at closing? And this one would tie actually back to number 1 in terms of setting appointments. Usually what I've found is agents that struggle with setting appointments struggle with asking for the business. They struggle with the close of saying, when can we get together? Is afternoon or evening better? Or asking them to sign the contract. So how good are you at closing on a scale of 1 to 10? And we'll work on that in all the presentation stuff that we're going to do. All right, next, number 8 is, let's see, which one should we do next? Let's do customer service. All right. A great book on this one. So I told you I'd mention some books in terms of customer service. There's a book, the name of it's Raving Fans. I can't remember who the author is, but Raving Fans. If you have not read the book Raving Fans, I would recommend you do that. It's all about customer service. The other one that I like to talk about in terms of customer service. So I mentioned to you that I have 3 boys. My oldest is almost 26. My middle son's 21. And my youngest is 13. Well, my middle son, my oldest son got a job working at some pizza place, was like one of his first jobs. By the time my second son was coming around, I told him, you need to work at Chick-fil-A. And my reasoning of telling him I wanted him to go work at Chick-fil-A is I wanted him to learn customer service. I have talked to so many different people that have said, if I'm doing a job interview and I see on a resume that the person worked at Chick-fil-A, I'm pretty much going to hire that person because I know they've been taught customer service. So my question for you, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you in terms of customer service? How good are you at it? If you need to get better, then go read that book, Raving Fans, so that you can learn and understand a little bit more about customer service and how to wow clients. And we have an agent in this office. His name's Justin Udy, which you may or may not know or have seen. But for years and years and years within this company, he was the top agent. Every year, he's still in the top 5. But he is one that he talks about with his clients. One of the things he promotes is that he delivers world-class customer service. You will hear him constantly talking about delivering world-class customer service. That's what you want to have in terms of this. All right, number 9. Future pacing. Okay, future pacing. What's future pacing? So when I say one of the skills is future pacing, what would that be?
What it takes to maintain success.
Okay, good. Thank you. So here's what future pacing would be. Future pacing is going to be basically telling your client what to expect. So think about future pacing is, for me, in terms of when I go out on a listing presentation and I'm talking to them about the price, pretty much every seller out there wants to list their home for more than it's worth. And they'll say things like, Well, we could always come down. Can't we start high? We could always come down. If we start too low, we can't come up and blah, blah, blah. You're going to get those same type of objections again, back that we were talking about here. The idea of future pacing is being able to say to that client, hey, when they say we want to try it at this higher price, future pacing would be saying, okay, here's what we want to be watching for then, is when we put your home on the market, we're going to want to watch to see the number of showings we get and the number of offers. And if we're not getting showings and offers, what that is the market telling us the price is too high. So I'm future pacing them to tell them what to expect. Let me give you another example. When you have a buyer or a seller, doesn't really matter actually, but they're going to do a home inspection. Part of what you want to do is future pace the client by telling them, here's what to expect from the home inspection. See, if you don't future pace a buyer on what a home inspection is going to look like, when they get the home inspection, they're going to want to cancel purchasing that house because they're afraid that it's got too much issues. But if you've done your job of future pacing, you're able to tell them, here's what to expect. Here's what we're going to look at. And so here's how I do it. With a buyer, I tell them, think about your home inspection as being a way for you to be brought up to speed on the property. Meaning that the person who lives in a house for a long time kind of knows, hey, like I'll tell you a real example for me right now, is I know at any time my air conditioner is going to quit working. Now, I hope it doesn't today because I just said that, but I know at any time because it has basically lived its life. And I have already had to have people come out and fix it. And it's been limping along for a few years, although knock on wood, cross my fingers, it's been running really great this year. But I know that anytime I'm going to be investing in a new air conditioner. Well, that's the idea of a home inspection, is the home inspector is going to go through and kind of tell you how much life, what to expect. It seems like it was put in a few years ago, or it's got, it's been in for this long. They're going to tell you this electrical might be an issue. Like for me, again, I had one light at my house on the exterior that was to a basement door that has not worked for years and years and years. And I just assumed that the light bulb had burned out. And I just was like, yeah, we never go in or out that door. I'm not going to change the light bulb. Well, we had a friend of ours coming up from St. George that was going to stay at our house, but they weren't going to get there till like 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, we didn't want them coming in the front door or even the garage door. So we said to them, hey, we'll put a key box, a contractor box on the basement door. So you can just go in the basement. That way you're not waking us up. You don't have to worry about being so quiet, blah, blah, blah. Well, I decided, well, I probably ought to get that light working because they're going to be showing up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, I went out there and I took out the light bulb and put a new light bulb in. It still didn't work. So I thought, well, I'll go buy a new light fixture because probably the fixture is not working. So I went and changed out the fixture. It still wouldn't work. So here's the point. The idea of a home inspection is, I just thought if I would have filled out seller disclosures, I probably would have never mentioned anything about it because I just thought it was a burned out light bulb. But in actuality, there was a problem with it. And a home inspector would have then been able to point that out. So the idea of this is where future pacing comes into play, is me telling a buyer, don't be frustrated when you get it and you see that they mentioned that this light fixture isn't working or whatever. Like to some extent, this home inspector is going out to create a honey-do list for you of here's the kind of stuff you're going to want to work on and look at. Now, are there going to be some things that the seller should fix? Like, for example, this light like that, where it wasn't just needing a new fixture kind of a thing, it wasn't working. And I have a brother-in-law that's a electrician. So I had him come over and we got it fixed and we got it working. But the point being, like, that's what future pacing is being able to say, here's what to expect. Now, let me tell you on the seller side how I do it. On the seller side, how I handle it is I will tell my sellers, when the buyer's doing their inspection, don't be surprised if they're going to come back and ask you to fix a whole bunch of things that you don't think you should have to fix. So don't be surprised if they ask for it. In fact, and this is where future pacing comes into play, this is what I say. In fact, the most items I've ever had a buyer ask the seller to fix, and this is true, by the way, was 72. The buyer came back and said to the seller, and this home was only like 5 years old, we want you to fix these 72 items. Now, what they did is the buyer took every single thing that the home inspector noted, they put it on a list and sent it over to the seller and said, we want you to fix every one of these things. Not reasonable. You know, there's no way we're going to do that. Some of the stuff was like not a big deal, but I tell my sellers now, as long as we get less than 72 items, be happy. See, that way, when we get a list from the buyer of, hey, we want you to fix these 3 or 4 things, I have future paced my seller that when they see 3 or 4, they're like, oh, wow, we got off pretty easy, right? See, that's future pacing. How good are you at doing that with clients? Is being able to kind of set expectations along the way so that they don't get surprised and frustrated. And in fact, you're to some extent over promising under promising, and then you're able to over deliver. Probably don't want to do the opposite on that. Over promise and under deliver. There's too many agents that do that. All right, that's future pacing. Number 10. Next one then is going to be negotiating. I'm going to just write it as negotiate, but how good are you at negotiating? Most agents are not good at this. Most agents are horrible at negotiating. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you fit? And what you want to do in this, in terms of negotiating, is another great book that I would recommend. If you feel like you're not good at this and you want to get better, Never Split the Difference is the name of the book, written by Chris Voss, V-O-S-S, Chris Voss. Never Split the Difference. You want to read that book and learn the skills that he gives you in there, you will become a really good negotiator if you'll do that. But at the end of the day, here's the secret. Find out what's important to the other party and figure out a way to get that to them. Because what we want, Chris Voss talks about this, is it's a win-win. We want to create a win-win scenario, not a win-lose. Most of us hear the word negotiate and we think about win-lose, but that's not what we want to do. We want it to be a win-win. So how good are you at negotiating? All right, number 11 is, what am I forgetting? Number 11, I'll do working with highly qualified buyers. That's the next skill, is working with highly qualified buyers. I got to figure out what the other one I'm missing is. So here's the thing. Buyers are fairly easy to come by, but part of what you've got to get good at is figuring out if they're highly qualified. Now, that doesn't just necessarily mean within Spiro that they qualified within Spiro, but that they have motivation, that they know what they want, that it's realistic. And I've got another, in the needs analysis class, we're going to go into more detail on this. But working with highly qualified buyers is a skill that you want to acquire. If you do it right, working with buyers is not a bad thing. There are a lot of agents out there who hate buyers, don't want to work with buyers. I had one guy that I was in a different company with. At that point, I was almost exclusively all listings. He was exclusively all buyers. And I was asking him, how can you stand to do that? Well, basically what he told me is if you get a really good, highly qualified buyer, he would take that over a listing any day because a highly qualified buyer is going to buy. And they're going to go out and find the property. Even if it falls apart, they'll go buy a different one because they're highly qualified. That's what you want to get good at, is finding buyers that are highly qualified, motivated, ready to go people. Because if not, then what you're going to do is struggle with them because they're going to run you all over the place and not purchase. All right, I got to go look at my list here and see what one I forgot here. One, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, what am I missing? Oh, I know what it is. There we go. Price reductions. So we were just talking about that. Price reductions. I usually do that right after future pacing. In fact, I talked about it as part of future pacing, is those two become connected together. If you're good at future pacing, it makes getting price reductions a lot easier. Now, we've been in a market for the last, really almost, I would say, somewhat since 2012, really, where price reductions hasn't been that big of an issue, but specifically the last year, for sure, you haven't had to worry too much about price reductions, but it's coming. Like as the inventory is climbing, we still got a long ways to go in terms of inventory, but inventory is climbing. Prices are getting high enough that it's chasing away a lot of buyers. In fact, the term I heard somebody use last week, which I thought was a good one, is buyer fatigue. There are a lot of buyers out there that have buyer fatigue, meaning they're frustrated at writing offers and not getting properties, so they're ready to just put it on hold. Because of that, you're going to need to get good at getting price reductions. And so we'll talk about that actually in the listing presentation class. But those are the 12 skills that you need to be constantly working on. So rate yourself on that on a scale of 1 to 10. How good are you at each of those? And hopefully now you know what you need to work on and get a little bit better at doing in terms of your skill sets. All right, number 6. Last one here is systems, tools, and strategies. So now remember, again, what we're talking about is that these are the things that top producing agents have. They've got their purpose, their vision, their why. They set goals, they have a plan and a schedule, they have a strong mindset, they are highly disciplined, or they use accountability, and they are really good at these 12 skills. The last thing that they have that they are good at is they have systems, tools, and strategies that they use. Now, so I'm going to give to you right now what I think are some of the systems that you want to get familiar with. So within 21 Online, so all of you should have access to that, or I know we're like Lisa, you just signed in yesterday. You might not have it yet, but you will in the next day or two, is the systems. So access to 21online.com. On 21online.com, there is so much stuff there. In fact, it can become overwhelming because there's so much stuff there. So what I'm going to give to you is just a few of the ones that I would recommend and that you become familiar with in terms of on 21online.com. The rest of the stuff, if you want to go play around with it a little bit, great. But here's the ones that I would say you want to get familiar with. First one is Zap. The Zap system, ZAP, Zap. Zap is going to be a database management system. And for me, that's the one you want to use to keep track of your people. And I'll teach a class on Zap and the basics of how to get that up and running and what you need to do on that. In fact, I need to get one scheduled soon here. But Zap is one of the ones you want to become familiar with. Okay, and it's a database management system. So again, tied back up here to this lead follow-up, Zap is going to be a great place for you to get good at that. All right, the next one is Business Builder. Business Builder actually is a database management system as well, but it doesn't have one of the key tools that I think Zap has. But so here's why I think you need to get good and be familiar with Business Builder is inside of Business Builder has flyers that you can use. That's the main thing I like Business Builder for, is when you want to create a flyer, if you'll go into Business Builder, into their marketing center, it is a great place for that. And again, like I said, I've got another class, the technology class, that I just realized I don't think I have it on the schedule. I need to add that. So I'll get that added in. But Business Builder is one you want to get familiar with in terms of using that for flyers, create your own flyers and things. All right, next one, Golden Ruler. So the Golden Ruler is a tool that you want to use as part of your systems. And what Golden Ruler will do is Golden Ruler keeps track of the number of views that your listings are getting online and the major websites like Zillow, Realtor.com, Century21.com. Golden Ruler is going to be a report that you set up and send to your seller. So when you get a listing, you want to set it up on Golden Ruler to have it emailed to your seller weekly what's going on with the number of views. that will help you in terms of getting price reductions as well. So golden ruler is another one you want to use. Next one is unique property websites. So unique property websites, that's another tool that's on 21 Online. Here's the idea of unique property websites. Every time you take a listing, Century 21 creates a unique property website for that property. So it creates a website just for that property that you've listed. On this website is a place that people could go print a flyer. It could, and there's a video, YouTube video that gets created using the photos that you have put on there. It's actually a pretty cool system. But part of what you want to do with this unique property websites is get familiar with it so that when you list a property, you could actually take that link for that website address and have your seller share it on their social media pages. That's what you want to do with unique property websites, okay? That's hopefully going to drive more business to you. And then the last one that I'm going to put on here is preferred. So I'm just going to put PCC, but that PCC stands for Preferred Client Club. So on 21 Online, there is a tool on there that is called Preferred Client Club. And what you want to do is you can go and put people onto this Preferred Client Club where, and like I said, I'll do it in the technology class, I'll cover this better. But on Preferred Client Club is, it costs like $35, and then it's going to set up and it's going to do some marketing to those people that are on there as a result of you putting them on the Preferred Client Club. So, all right. Those are the systems, tools, and strategies. So what I would say for now is, for you guys that are newer, is just know you got to have systems, tools, and strategies. And these are the 5 that I would recommend that you become familiar with on 21 Online. There's a ton of other things on 21 Online. Like I said, it could become overwhelming, but just get good at these 5. Pick those 5 to get good at, and you'll be great. And then down the road, if you want to add some others, you can do that. All right. Here's the point. This company foundation, everything we do within the company, any trainings, anything you ever go to, should have its roots in one of these 6 things. Because that's what top producers need. Is as a top producing agent, you need to have understanding of your purpose, your vision, why, set some goals, have a plan to get there and a schedule that you're going to follow, have a strong mindset, have the discipline and accountability to follow those schedules and to work on these skill sets, and then use these systems and tools. And if you'll do that, you will be successful as well. All right, questions, comments? Applause. Just kidding. Yeah, I love, Mark, that you're putting that on there to create an accountability group. That's awesome. Cool. All right. No questions, no comments. You guys are all sleeping or watching some show on TV?
No, it's just all great stuff. But as
Oh,
you
cool.
said, I'm in kind of that overwhelmed point right now. There's so much good stuff that I just spin around without direction.
Okay, well, good. So here's what I would say then.
Exactly.
Get into that accountability group and just get started going. And if I can help, let me know. Okay,
Will
well,
do.
hopefully,
Thank you, Russ.
yeah, you're welcome. Hopefully this was helpful. So Thursday will be the business plan. So I will email out to you tomorrow a business plan. Unless you've already been to the class, then I won't. But I'm going to email out the business plan. And then on Thursday, we're going to go through and talk about the business plan and the schedule and all that, helping you and get some goals set.
Great. Thanks, Russ.
Have a good one. We'll talk to you guys on.
Thank
Thursday.
you.
You're welcome. Hope your dog gets feeling better, Abby.
Thank you, Russ. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks, guys. See ya.